Part 113. The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth. Author, Jin Kui. Chapter 1121. Dingjing used to be a city with a population of more than 1 million, and houses in the outer city were lined up. Since Dingjing was destroyed, many houses in the outer city were burnt down, and the people were killed and taken away. As a result, there are only more than 300,000 people left in Dingjing with a population of 1 million. Dingjing is no longer as prosperous as it used to be, and the entire outer city is a dilapidated scene. When the sage saw the memorial of the grandfather of the country, he was even more determined to return to Beijing as soon as possible. If the holy car returns to Beijing, the officials must return with him. Some smart businessmen will definitely seize the opportunity to go to the capital. Some of the people who escaped will also return. It will take at least a few years for the entire Dingjing to be fully repaired before returning, and when the officials, commoners, and businessmen return to Dingjing, they will soon be able to reinvigorate the dilapidated Dingjing, with sufficient manpower and faster repairs. After the sage made a decision, he announced when he went to court on the second day that after the first month, the entire court and all the officials would be relocated back to Beijing. The sage did not say the specific date, but such a major event must be calculated by the supervisor Qin Tian. The voice of opposition was still there, so Han Ji came out and said, "Sir, Dingjing has not been won soon, and the north is not stable. Go to this time. In case the Jin army makes a comeback, I am afraid." Han Ji didn't finish his old words, but everyone knew what he didn't say. The sage said loudly, "If the Jin army hits Dingjing again, I will personally stand at the top of the city and lead the army and the people to resist the enemy. Since Dingjing is back in the hands of Great Chu, I will never let it be lost again." Zhang Yuzi came out and said, "Sage Shangzhen is a wise ruler through the ages, and there is an emperor who guards the country's gate, and the great Chu Zhongshan will be safe." The saint slapped the handrail suddenly and stood up. Zhang Yiking said it well, "The emperor guards the gate of the country. I am the emperor of Great Chu, and I will protect the country and people of Great Chu. Qin Tianjian is in charge. I order you to calculate the auspicious day as soon as possible. I want to return to Beijing." After the court, the news of the saint's decision to return to Beijing spread everywhere. It's only the 12th lunar month, and although there is at least a month left before returning to Beijing, for the big family, this is not a trip that just goes away. The farm shops in Xiangcheng have to be taken care of, and some should be dealt with as soon as possible. It all takes time. For a time, there were many shops in Xiangcheng. With the departure of Shenjia and Beguan, after Xiangcheng lost its role as the capital of the country, there is no doubt that housing prices will drop rapidly. The dental people in Xiangcheng are so busy, but they sell more and buy less, which has led to the price of the shop continuing to drop, and the price of the shop has not fallen back to the price of more than 10 years ago. The Kuagong's mansion was also preparing to go to the capital. Gu Yunjiao did not plan to sell several shops in her hands, and the land near Xiangcheng was handed over directly to her cousin Gu Tang, who asked him to collect the rent and rent it to him. 30% of him is hard work. As for Reng Zintang, Gu Yunjiao decided to leave it to a Tai to take care of it. She doesn't need to take care of the perfume workshop, she still manages it together with the Shenqing father and son and the queen. She entrusted the Biao workshop, but she instructed Shenqing that the secret recipe could not be passed on, and it was only known to him. After so many years, she is still assured of Shenqing's character. After the new year, Gu Yuhang and Aunt Hua Wufang went to Hexi County with their 2 children. In the first month, officials from the Ministry of Rights and Households of the Ministry of Industry went to the capital first. The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth. Author, Jin Kui. Chapter 1122. In February, officials from various ministries began to enter Beijing in batches, and they all followed the saint. On the 24th of February, All preparations have been made in place. The Empress Dowager, the Queen Mother, all the concubines in the harem, and the rest of the officials set off for Beijing. On this trip, the sage did not make too much pomp, and only 5,000 Jinwuvai accompanied him. The people of the Kuagong's mansion were also mixed in the convoy. During the day, Zhang Yuzi accompanies the saint to handle government affairs, and Gu Yunjiao chats and laughs with Yang Ying, and the days pass quickly. When we arrived in the capital, it was the season of spring. The Zhenyang gate of the capital opened wide, and the people of the capital knelt down on the ground along the way. Long live the mountains! The sage sat in the imperial chariot and slowly waved to the surrounding people. Most of the people kneeling on the ground wept bitterly. They have been waiting for this day for more than 10 years. The people who stayed in Dingjing were actually the worst. They are regarded as inferior pariahs by Jin people, doing the dirtiest and most tiring work. When they encounter Jin people on the street, they can only avoid them from afar. Otherwise, in case of collision, Jin people can beat and scold Dacha people at will. This is a great humiliation for the people of Chu who pay attention to the etiquette of poetry and books. Once the humiliation is washed away, how can we not cry bitterly? The Holy Master looked at the weeping people and felt very uncomfortable. The convoy moved forward slowly. Gu Yunjiao's carriage was caught in the convoy, entered the city, and quickly drove in the direction of the Kuagong mansion. At this time, it was still the outer city, and the curtains were opened, and sometimes broken tiles and ruins could be seen. Yang Ying and Gu Yunjiao sat in a car, pointed to a house on the side of the road and said, "That's my house." Gu Yunjiao hurriedly stopped the carriage, "Go down and have a look, maybe your family is back." Yang Ying saw that the door of the house was tightly closed. She hesitated for a while, but she opened the curtain and got out of the car. Yang Ying's girl, Amber, went to pat the door, but no one answered after a long time. Yang Ying got into the carriage in disappointment, and the carriage drove towards the Duke's mansion. The government seems to be still the same. Only the plaque outside the gate is gone. When Butler Wang came over before, there was still a sign of Xiao's house hanging on it. Butler Wang immediately had the plaque taken off, chopped into pieces and burned. Butler Wang couldn't decide what to do with the new plaque, so he left it empty. When Gu Yunjiao got home, she first assigned the courtyard. Needless to say, the main courtyard must belong to the grandfather of the country. She lives in the former yard by herself. After more than 10 years, the red sandalwood furniture in the yard is still there, as if everything was the same as yesterday. Gu Yunjiao looked at the red sandalwood bed and felt a little uncomfortable, so she asked someone to change it. After the house was settled, Gu Yunjiao took people to the former Ren Xi and Tang. This shop is well preserved in the inner city, but now it has been converted into a satin shop. Gu Yunjiao led someone into the door. The owner of the silk and satin shop saw that the lady had a noble temperament and many entourage. It just happened that a new batch of goods arrived. They are all the best silk and satin, which are suitable for people like Madame. Gu Yunjiao heard that although the boss tried his best to learn the Dingjing dialect, he still had an accent from Huaning, and he should be from Jin. She said lightly, "I don't buy silk and satin. I'm here to tell you that this shop is mine. Within 3 days, you will empty all the things in the shop. After 3 days, I will come to collect the shop." The owner of the silk and satin shop was stunned. "How could it be yours? I bought it 10 years ago for thousands of taels of silver." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth. Author, Jin Kui. Chapter 1123. Gu Yunjiao spent more than 10,000 taels when she bought this shop, which was the capital of Dechu at that time. But for the Jin kingdom, Dingjing is just an ordinary city, not as prosperous as it used to be, and the price is of course much lower. Yang Ying laughed beside her. Are you from Jin? Cold sweat rolled out on the boss's forehead. No, no, I'm from Dachu. After the Duke of Dingjing took down Dingjing, he did not burn, kill, rob or loot in the city. After all, this was not an enemy country, but the capital of Great Chu. Not only that, he also asked the soldiers to maintain order in the city, shops opened as they were, and sales were done as they were. He just killed all the officials of Jin state, including the males over 6 years old, and the female relatives of the officials were thrown into the army as military prostitutes, or given to the soldiers below. In any army in history, there are basically military prostitutes. It's just that the government never admits this in the open. The army is full of young and middle-aged men, and there is no need. If it is not vented for a long time, people's emotions will unconsciously become violent, and the entire military camp will become a very dangerous powder keg. This is also a means of soothing the soldiers' emotions. And this boss came here from Huaning 10 years ago to do business. He bought the shop with almost all his fortune, and then opened a satin shop. Business is barely passable. After the Duke of Dingjing captured Dingjing, the owner of the silk and satin shop was worried because he was from Jin, but after a period of time, no one bothered him, so he continued to open the shop with peace of mind. As for Dingjing becoming the territory of Great Chu again, he doesn't care much about these. He heard that the Emperor of Great Chu was going to return to Dingjing, and he knew that his chance to make a fortune was coming. After getting the news, he imported a large amount of goods and waited. When the nobles of Dachu returned to Beijing, he made a lot of money. Unexpectedly, before the business started, someone would rob his shop. The boss spoke in a lame Dingjing dialect, "I won't let this shop go. I bought this with my money, and the deeds are all there." Gu Yunjiao chuckled, "House deed? This is Dachu, what's the use of the property deed of the Jin government?" The boss is struck by lightning. Yes, it's already a big Chu here now. His house deed was stamped with the official seal of the Dingzhou government in the Jin kingdom, and it was a piece of shit. The boss grimaced, "Even so, I bought it for a few thousand taels. It's not a small amount of money, who am I going to talk to?" Gu Yunjiao said lightly, "I originally opened a pharmacy here, but the people of Jin came in, robbed my shop, robbed my home, and killed my relatives. Who am I going to talk to?" The boss was unable to refute these words, so he had to put on a pitiful look. "Madam, I can return the shop to you, but please give me some money. I'm just an ordinary person. You take away the shop, my life savings will be gone." Yang Ying snorted coldly, "You are a Jin countryman, it would be good if you didn't kill you. Do you still want money? There are countless rare treasures in our country's palace, and countless gold and silver have been snatched by your Jin people. How dare you ask us for silver?" The boss heard the 3 words of Kuagongfu, and was so frightened that he couldn't utter a word. It has been about 5 months since Dingjing returned to Dachu. He often heard those people in Dachu say how powerful the Duke of Guo was, and it was thanks to the Duke of Guo that Dingjing was taken back. The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth. Author, Jinkui. Chapter 1124. The boss's original idea of recovering a little loss has disappeared completely. How dare he ask the people of the state government to ask for money? He bowed his head and bowed his hands, his attitude became respectful. "Follow madam's instructions, I will definitely vacate the shop within 3 days." Gu Yunjiao turned around and left with someone. Then she first went to the house she bought before, which is also in the imperial city, and is now lived in by a family of 4. This family is also from the Jin state. They came from Yulan a few years ago and opened a rice shop here. Gu Yunjiao didn't talk to them, she just took out the house deed and asked them to move out as soon as possible. Today, the Jin people in the Ding capital are all trembling with fear, lest the Chu people want to settle accounts with them. After collecting the house, Gu Yunjiao went to collect her perfume workshop and bio workshop. The perfume workshop in the inner city has already stopped work, but looking at the situation inside, the stoppage time is not long. After inquiring, I found out that this perfume workshop was acquired by King Liang long ago. He hired workers to produce it and used distillation equipment to extract flower essential oils. It's just that they don't have a recipe and can't match it, but they don't care, just mix the essential oil with a little water and sell it as a perfume. Also made a lot of money. After King Liang was killed by the grandfather of the country, the steward sent by King Liang to the workshop ran away. The workers in the workshop were unmanaged, and naturally they all swept away the previous things and ran away. Gu Yunjiao looked around. Fortunately, the utensils in the past were relatively large, and they were not easy to disassemble, and they were not damaged. Then I went to the outer city to see the Biao workshop. The Biao workshop has been completely abandoned. There was even grass growing on the rammed ground in the house. The Biao formula that Gu Yunjiao gave Wan Yanzang in the past did not seem to be a problem. Wan Yanzang began to prepare the Biao workshop. After he died, Dr. Chen took the formula and took over the Biao workshop. Biao was produced, but sales were not good. It turned out that Gu Yunjiao changed one medicine and added another medicine, so that the effect of stopping bleeding was similar at first glance. However, once the powder was poured on the wound, it was an unbearable pain, and few people were willing to use it. Even in the army, the soldiers were willing to use ordinary gold sore medicine instead of white medicine. After all, the feeling of rubbing salt on the wound, few people can bear. Later, when Dr. Chen saw that he could not make any money, he stopped the workshop. The Biao bought by Jin people was sold by merchants, and the bottle was stamped with the mark of Rengzintang. The capital is now underpopulated, and so is the manpower. Gu Yunjiao couldn't find any workers for a while, so she could only let the Biao workshop go to waste. This time back to Beijing, many people actually followed. Because the sage said that after returning to Beijing, the people will be allocated land. Not only in the vicinity of Dingjing, but in the entire north there is a large area of unowned land. In the past, who of the officials of the third rank and above in the capital did not own thousands of acres, tens of thousands of acres, or even tens of thousands of acres? As those third-rank officials were taken captive to Huaning, large tracts of land fell into the hands of the nobles of Jin. And now, it's back to Dechu. Some of those officials are still alive in Yulan, and maybe they still have the land deeds in their hands, but the sage has already made up his mind that if there is not much land, he will let the government return the land. If it is tens of thousands of acres, hundreds of thousands of acres, will you pay him back? Impossible. The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth. Author, Jinkui. Chapter 1125. Zhang Yu had proposed early on that he should take this opportunity to curb land mergers and not allow a large amount of land to be concentrated in the hands of nobles, which would only make people lose their living space. Therefore, the fields obtained by these officials in the past with less glorious means, the court will also use less glorious means to take back. When things settle down, the tax system will also be adjusted. The entire Ding capital fell into a hectic and lively atmosphere. Jingzhou Yamen has recently recruited a large number of literate clerks to help people renew their housing and land deeds. The sage asked the Yamen to publicize the land and house deeds that the common people could take out, and after the officials checked that they were correct, they would issue a new deed. If the title deed is lost accidentally, as long as there are more than 3 neighbors to certify, the deed can be reissued. So the Yamen was busy. The house deed in Gu Yunjiao's hand also made housekeeper Wang get a new deed from the Yamen. The land deeds of the Kuagong's mansion are also with her. There are a lot of apprentices in the Kuagong's mansion, so Gu Yunjiao hasn't moved yet, and she has to discuss with Zhang Yuzi to see what to do. It's just that Zhang Yuzi didn't have time these days, so he was so busy that he rested in the office for several days. On the 3rd day, Gu Yunjiao went to collect the shop. The door was closed, and when I pushed in, the whole shop was empty. The boss also took care of the hygiene very carefully. The shop in front and the yard in the back were all cleaned up, and not even a scrap of paper was left behind. Gu Yunjiao was very satisfied. Butler Wang found a carpenter, and after measuring the size of the shop, he started making the medicine cabinet. Every day when Gu Yunjiao was free, she moved the treasures from the imperial government's mansion that she had kept to the warehouse. Time passed so slowly, and the cabinet of Gu Yunjiao's pharmacy was ready. Seeing that there were more people in the capital, as soon as Reng Zhentang's sign was posted, Gu Yunjiao quickly recruited a few guys, and the pharmacy opened prosperously. In the perfume workshop, Gu Yunjiao handed over to Yang Ying to take care of it, and agreed that the future profits, her own share, would be divided into half with Yang Ying. Yang Ying has been with her for so many years, but she refuses to marry. She has to plan for her and save her some money for her retirement. Yang Ying knew what Gu Yunjiao meant, and she didn't refuse. She took the post in a hurry. After going through so many things and working with Gu Yunjiao in Reng Zhentang every day, Yang Ying is no longer the delicate and timid girl she used to be. She did things neatly, and quickly recruited the people she needed with a high salary, and the perfume workshop started. Seeing that some matters in the court and the people were on the right track, the Holy Master finally let go of his tense heart. On this day, Sheng Shang was in good spirits and flipped over the brand of concubine Rong Gui. Concubine Rong Gui used 18 kinds of martial arts to serve with all her might, which made the sage very satisfied. The sage was lying on the dragon bed comfortably, when concubine Rong wrapped around him next to him, and said delicately, "Your Majesty, the elder brother of the concubine is dedicated to serving the country, and also wants to go to the front line to fight. Your Majesty will give him a chance, okay?" The saint is in the time of the sage, his mind is very calm, and he snorted softly. It has been almost 2 years since the battle had been fought. Not only did Dingjing regained, but the Hexi Corridor and the 16 states of Yuyun all fell into the hands of Dechu. Today's territory is even more vast than when the Great Chu dynasty was founded. Grandpa Guo is now leading his troops in Huining. Lin Chuo also started to attack the city and moved towards Huining. Anyone with long eyes in this war can see that victory is only a matter of time. At this time, to go to the front line to fight, that is, to gild and get credit. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth. Author, Jin Kui. Chapter 1126. Perhaps it was because concubine Rong Gui was working too hard today, and the saint softened, "Come on, let him go if he wants to, but it's a battlefield after all, swords have no eyes, and it's not that easy to take credit." Concubine Rong Gui was overjoyed. "Thank you, Your Majesty, thank you, Your Majesty." There must be some credit for her brother's departure. It only depends on the size of the credit. If you are lucky, maybe you can get a knighthood, which is too beautiful. The next day, Rong Ding packed up his things, took the documents from the Ministry of Officials, and set off with his guards. After walking for half a month, I arrived at the front line to meet the grandfather of the country. Grandpa Guo looked at the documents of the Ministry of Officials, and he knew very well that if Rong Ding could stop at this time, it could only be the meaning of the sage. The sage is willing to give him a little credit for his promotion. Grandpa Guo hung him for 2 days first, but he was not very annoying when he saw this, and he just stayed in the tent without a task for him. At this moment, Grandpa Guo received news from Zhang Che. Originally, the father-in-law ordered Uer to lead 5,000 people to conquer a small town called Hesheng, but Zhang Che sent a letter to him. The moat of Hesheng was unusually wide, and the entire city wall was made of granite. Going to the city still needs more manpower, and the originally planned 20 days is probably not enough. The fact that a small town has such a defense was something that the grandfather of the country never expected. When UER set out with the troops, he only brought about 20 days' worth of food and forage. Considering the time on the road, the food and forage must not be enough. The grandfather of the country thought about it, and then handed over the task of delivering food to Rong Ding. After all, the saint had to give face, but Rong Ding could not fight, so he could only give him some light work. It's just that UER needs reinforcements, he really can't tell the strength, and now the siege of a big city here is at the most critical time. So in addition to the people who escorted the grain and grass, the grandfather of the country also gave Rong Ding an infantry team of 500 people to escort the grain and grass to guard against the small group of Jin troops that might encounter. Rong Ding set off with his own bodyguard and the food delivery team. Zhang Che has been leading the soldiers to attack the city for more than 10 days. There are not many soldiers guarding the city here, it is estimated that there are about 2,000 people, but the city is built extremely strong. Granite is produced locally, so the entire city wall is made of granite. Not to mention, the moat is extremely wide and deep, making it difficult to build bridges. In the past 10 days, the soldiers used a rain of arrows to fill the trench with a road that was 10 feet wide at the cost of a few casualties. At the same time, tunnels are still being dug forward from the trenches. Digging the tunnel is not to enter the city through the tunnel, but to dig the foundation of the city wall. No matter how strong the city wall is without foundation support, it will only collapse. Zhang Che did not intend to attack the city now. In fact, there is no good way to siege a city. If you attack by force, you usually use the head pile. This is not because Zhang Che is merciful and soft-hearted. It is a taboo to be soft-hearted for the general. When it is time to be ruthless, he will naturally be ruthless. Now the task of sieging the city is not urgent, and he does not want to make unnecessary sacrifices. Zhang Che sat on the ground and looked around. It was already late at night. Except for the patrolling soldiers, everyone else slept, and the camp was very quiet. He looked at a large tent not far away, and it was full of military rations. It's just that the rations are running out, and it can last for 2 or 3 days. The scouts he sent to deliver the letter to the grandfather have already returned and brought back the words of the grandfather. The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth. Author, Jinkui. Chapter 1127. Grandpa Guo said that there is really no extra manpower to support him, but he will immediately send people to bring enough food and grass to let him not be impetuous. This coincides with Zhang Che's current strategy of digging tunnels. Logically, the food should have arrived today. After all, this place is only about 500 miles away from the main battlefield on Grandpa Guo's side, which is a few days' journey. I guess it will arrive tomorrow. Zhang Che didn't think too much. Looking at the high city wall in the distance, he continued to think about the strategy for attacking the city. Logically, the food should have arrived today. The next day, Zhang Che commanded some soldiers to cover, and some soldiers continued to dig tunnels. The tunnel has been dug under the root of the city wall, and if he gives him a few more days, the foundation of that section of the city wall will be completely loosened. At that time, the city wall may tilt or collapse, which is the time to attack the city. When the sun went down, the food delivery team Zhang Che had expected to arrive had not arrived yet. Zhang Che felt something unusual. The general commander-in-chief of this war is his own grandfather. If it were anyone else, Zhang Che would suspect that this was deliberately trying to trick him. He had heard people say that there were many such tricks in the army, but his grandfather would never do it. Impossible to pit him. Moreover, there is no shortage of food and grass there. Not to mention that Dechu has been preparing for the war, and there is sufficient food and grass. Along the way, every time they conquer a city, all the food and grass in the city will be taken away. When there was no shortage of food, and grandfather couldn't betray him, it could only be that something happened to the food delivery team. After Zhang Che figured it out, he immediately dispatched a few scouts to investigate along the road. If he didn't find a supply team, he had to immediately ask the grandfather of the country to send food and grass. When the scouts sent out, Zhang Che was not at ease. If the food and grass cannot be delivered as soon as possible, after 2 days, the army will be out of food. Grandpa Guo's base camp is about 500 miles away from here, and it would take 2 or 3 days for the scouts to pass by, even if they are fast horses. In other words, the worst case scenario is that they will be without food for at least 5 or 6 days. 5 or 6 days, people should be almost hungry. Zhang Che frowned. Now there are several options. First, save food and grass, eat 1 meal a day, and lead 5,000 soldiers to retreat to the direction of the base camp. Second, attack the city immediately, and within 2 days, take the city, and there will naturally be food and grass in the city. Third, continue the previous siege plan and continue to dig tunnels. The food and grass may arrive the day after tomorrow. What is difficult to judge now is where the grain and grass are and how long it will take to arrive. 16-year-old Zhang Che looked at the dark night, unable to make a decision for a while. His decision will affect the life and death of these 5,000 people, and he must be cautious. The next day, the rations Zhang Che sent to each camp had been slightly reduced, so he had to make some preparations. After breakfast, he ordered to continue digging the tunnel. He decided to wait a day. If the food and grass have not arrived before the sun sets today, then he must choose 1 or 2 options. The sun was slowly sinking into the horizon, but there was still no sign of the forage. Zhang Che knew that he couldn't wait any longer. He had to make a decision immediately. Retreat is naturally the safest plan. Save food and eat, they will starve, but they will definitely not starve to death. The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth. Author, Jing Kui. Chapter 1128. The scouts passed the news to the grandfather of the country that they should meet the food delivery team on the way back to the base camp. However, in this way, 5,000 soldiers ran back and forth for thousands of miles, filled trenches for more than 10 days, and dug tunnels for more than 10 days, but they returned without success. Siege is a bit risky, but it's not impossible to give it a try. 16-year-old Zhang Che finally made a decision at this moment to attack the city. He immediately summoned the centurions of the army to discuss the matter. Zhang Che didn't hide anything about the problem, and then said his decision: siege the city. And to win the city as quickly as possible, the only way to solve the problem of food and grass. You can't wait until you really run out of food before attacking the city. The soldiers don't even have the strength to fight. None of the generals opposed Zhang Che's decision. They have been following Zhang Che for almost a year. During this year, they followed this young man to fight big and small battles, and each time they achieved the greatest victory with the least casualties. Although he is young, it turns out that every decision he makes is extremely correct. What else to say? Of course they do what he says. Soon, Zhang Che and the generals worked out a detailed siege plan. The next morning, the soldiers buried the pot to cook rice. Zhang Che did not withhold any more rations, and distributed all the remaining rations in the camp. And asked the soldiers to take the remaining rations as dry food after they had breakfast, and they were about to attack the city. The soldiers of the Jin state on the top of the city were shooting arrows while watching the Dachu troops below continue to dig soil on the side of the moat. The intention of the Dachu army is obvious: to dig loose the foundation, break down the city wall, and take the opportunity to attack the city. The soldiers of the Jin state knew this, and they had no choice but to use arrows, rain, wood, and beating stones to deal with the Dachu soldiers. They could only watch them dig tunnels every day. Many soldiers knew in their hearts that after 2 years of war, most of Dajin's territory had been lost, and it would be a matter of time before the city was destroyed. However, if the city is not broken for a day, they will stick to it for a day. Maybe there will be reinforcements in Huining. Maybe there is still a glimmer of hope for people to live. The Jin army on the city wall did not find out that the tunnels dug by the soldiers of Dachu today were different from those in the past, and no load of soil was sent out at all. Zhang Che didn't ask the soldiers to dig the soil, but let people put explosives under the hollowed-out section of the wall. The reason why they chose to place the explosives in the tunnels instead of bombing the gates was because the soldiers had already discovered that the 4 gates of Crane City had all been blocked by large and small stones. Fried and fried. As for the explosives in Zhang Che's hand, whether it was enough to blow up the foundation under the city wall and cause the city wall to collapse, it was only a gamble. Several explosive packs were gathered together and placed at the end of the tunnel. This is already the entire stock in Zhang Che's hands. After placing the explosives, everyone withdrew from the tunnel, leaving only the last soldier who lit the lead. Even if the lead of this explosive is long enough, as the person who stayed to ignite the fuse, there is basically no return. The soldier who ordered the lead was called Wang Er. When Zhang Che chose the dead man who ordered the explosives this morning, he stood up himself. He was originally from Dingjing. When Dingjing was destroyed, his mother jumped into a well after being abused by Jin soldiers, and then his father was taken to Jin as a laborer. He was only 6 years old at the time. After surviving, he moved to Xiangcheng and signed up for the army. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth. Author, Jin Kui. Chapter 1129. When Zhang Che chose the dead man, Wang Er took the initiative to stand up. I run fast. At my speed, it may be possible to survive. It doesn't matter if I don't survive. I was originally an orphan, and I have nothing to worry about in this world, and no parents will be sad for me. Everyone was silent for a while. Zhang Che solemnly saluted him, then I'll leave it to you. Wang Er stood alone in the tunnel, counting the time. It wasn't until he felt that the time was enough for his comrades to withdraw to a safe place, and he took off the torch on the wall of the cave and lit the long lead tremblingly. Then, he picked up the torch and started running wildly in the tunnel. After running for a while, he suddenly dropped the torch in his hand. He had already seen the light at the tunnel exit. At this moment, a muffled sound came from behind him, and a huge impact knocked him to the ground. Wang Er's hand stretched out towards the bright light, and countless pieces of mud instantly drowned him. When Zhang Che heard the muffled sound, he stared intently at the city wall. I saw the earth shaking, and the earth on the ground was blown open everywhere. He didn't choose to blow up the city wall. He knew that this explosive would have little effect on granite. What he chose was to blow up the soil foundation under the city wall. Whether it succeeds or not, he has no idea. He saw smoke and dust everywhere, and in the billowing smoke and dust, he saw the solid granite city wall, swaying a few times, and then it seemed to collapse suddenly. The collapse of the city wall brought more smoke and dust, accompanied by a loud noise. The sound passed, the smoke and dust gradually fell, and a section of the city wall about a few feet long became a pile of rocks. The Jin soldiers on the surrounding city walls panicked. At this moment, the drums of war in Zhang Che's army were beating. The soldiers rushed along the paved road over the trench towards the crumbling walls. It's almost a straight line. On the side of the collapsed city wall, Jin soldiers could not defend at all. There were no arrow stacks, no bunkers, and on the pile of stones that collapsed in this section of the city wall, they had no defensive advantage, and they were in the same position as the soldiers of Dachu. And the soldiers of Dachu were more than twice as many. Zhang Che also rushed towards the pile of rocks following the drum of war. In desperation, the soldiers of Jin State hurriedly searched for cover in the pile of rocks and shot arrows at the soldiers of Dachu. Zhang Che rushed in front. He was wearing light leather armor and a silver mask on his face, and quickly rushed to the pile of rocks. There is a long sword in his hand, and when the long sword passes, it must bring a bloody light. Behind him are the personal guards who have followed him for many years, who are equally brave. A few people were like a sharp sword, and they tore a hole, and the soldiers behind them rushed up along the hole, rushed into the city from the pile of rocks, and then climbed the city wall. The fight continued until nightfall. 5,000 soldiers and horses smashed Hesheng with minimal casualties. And until this moment, the team that sent supplies has not arrived. The first thing to do to capture Hesheng is to open the grain depot and let the soldiers have a full meal, and then send the scouts to deliver the letter to the grandfather of the country, and then start to deal with the follow-up matters. Grandpa Guo had just seen the first batch of scouts sent by Zhang Che. Hearing that the grain and grass had not been delivered to Hesheng, the grandfather of the country couldn't believe it. For a distance of less than 500 miles, it should arrive in about 1.5 days, and if it is slower, it is at most 6 days. With such a distance, the food and grass have not yet arrived. The key is that the scouts came all the way and did not find this team transporting food and grass. Where did this team of escorting food and grass go? The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth. Author, Jing Kui. Chapter 1130. Could it be that he encountered a small group of Jin troops who were fleeing, and the whole army was wiped out? Grandpa Guo has no time to think about this issue now. UER is going to run out of food. He immediately asked people to pack food and grass overnight and set off on the road again. This team had only set out for a day when they ran into the second group of scouts sent by Zhang Che. The food delivery officer dispatched this time was the prince's personal soldiers. The personal soldiers heard that Zhang Che had led someone to take Hesheng, and immediately took the food and grass and went around with the soldiers. Grandpa Guo was overjoyed by the news. Although UER took some risks in this siege, fortunately, it was a success. He sent a scout to UER, instructing the next move, and at the same time, he sent a lot of scouts out to find the food delivery team. Even if this team was wiped out by the Jin army, it should leave traces, corpses, food, carriages and horses. None of these could disappear out of thin air. More than a dozen experienced scouts extended their search. After several days of searching, a scout finally found the team delivering food. This team was not destroyed as they imagined, but lost. The Jin country has a vast land and sparsely populated areas, unlike the Dechu side. There are official roads between the city, and the wide wilderness is free to run. This team walked in the wilderness, relying on a simple map and a north compass in Rongding's hand. But Rongding can't read maps. In the team of 500 people led by Rongding, several centurions could read simple maps and identify basic directions, but they did not have the opportunity to look at maps for the time being. I don't know who gave Rongding's confidence. Maybe because he was eager to make a contribution, Rongding even took a guess and took a look at the map. After confirming the location of Hesheng, he took the compass and walked in the right direction. During this period, several centurions raised their opinions and felt that they were going in the wrong direction, but Rongding didn't listen to them at all. In his opinion, these are just a few reckless men who don't even recognize a word, and he genuinely despises them. Rongding was Shangguan, and several centurions had to obey his orders. Under his will, they strayed farther and farther from Hesheng. After seeing it for 5 or 6 days, Hesheng didn't even have a shadow, so Rongding panicked and asked the centurions to find a way. The centurions had nothing to think about at this point. The point is they don't know where they are. Dajin is a vast area with sparsely populated areas. Many places are vast wilderness, no cities, no iconic buildings. Who knows where they are? Moreover, in this ghost place, even a passerby can't find it, and there is no way to ask for directions. If you don't know your position, you can't judge which direction to go to Crane City. After a few centurions discussed, they decided to temporarily stop moving forward, otherwise it may become farther and farther from the destination. They are not short of food and grass now, even if they stay for a few months, they are not afraid. In the past few days, several centurions have been studying the map every day, and they also hoped that a passerby would pass by so that they would know where they were. Wait and wait, wait until the scout. The team followed the scouts back to the camp. Back at the camp, the grandfather of the country figured out what was going on, so he had Rongding tied up. Rongding struggled desperately, "Why tie me up? I just got lost, and I didn't mean to." Grandpa Guo said lightly, "If you did it on purpose, you'd be dead by now." Fortunately, Uer made a decisive decision this time, so there were no serious consequences, and the anger of the grandfather was not so heavy. Otherwise, regardless of whether he was intentional or not, whether he was the brother of the imperial concubine or not, the grandfather of the country would definitely cut him off. Now that the grandfather of the country is too lazy to touch him, he personally wrote the memorial, and let Rongding be taken back to Beijing.